Nicholas found himself alone in the apartment after Tara stormed out, their latest argument still hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. Ever since they both switched to working remotely, mornings had taken on a rhythm of their own, often beginning with tension. Their cozy studio, tucked away on the edge of town, left little room for privacy. And since both of their jobs involved a lot of phone calls, they'd come up with a workaround. They alternated locations. On this particular day, it was Tara's turn to head out while Nicholas stayed behind. The setup, while far from perfect, helped keep them from stepping on each other's toes. But truth be told, it had taken a while and more than a few rough patches to land on this arrangement. There had been burnout, frustration, and more than one evening spent in stubborn silence. They'd watched other couples crack under the same pressure, even split up. But not them. Not yet anyway. Tara and Nicholas were still hanging in there. They made a point of spending evenings and weekends together, clinging to the thread of normalcy as they chipped away at their savings for a down payment on their first place. As the fiery spark between them cooled, more practical matters took center stage. Conversations about passion gave way to spreadsheets and home loan calculators. One afternoon, after wrapping up a particularly draining call with a difficult client, Nicholas wandered into the kitchen in search of a break and some tea. But when he opened the drawer, all he found was an empty box. With a sigh, he figured there might still be some loose-leaf tea left. He reached up to the top shelf, where they usually kept backup supplies. But as he opened the cabinet, something caught his eye. Behind the tea tin, wedged in the back, was the edge of a box he didn't recognize. Curious, he shifted the jar aside and discovered a small velvet case tucked away in the corner. His first thought? Tara must have done some early holiday shopping. The idea made him grin. This year, they'd decided not to celebrate the new year together in the traditional sense. Nicholas had to fly out to the Far East to deal with some family matters. And Tara, always the practical one, chose to stay behind to avoid the cost of the pricey holiday airfare. They agreed to put the money toward their future instead, maybe even get a little closer to that mortgage goal. Tara would spend the holiday catching up with friends, and Nicholas would keep his family issues separate, just like they'd planned. Still smiling, Nicholas opened the box. Inside, a pair of gleaming cufflinks, elegant, polished, and completely out of character for him. He didn't wear the kind of shirts that needed those, never had. His style leaned more toward comfort and simplicity. The gift, while thoughtful, left him puzzled, and maybe just a little let down. He snapped the box shut and placed it back where he found it. All day, the cufflinks lingered in his thoughts. He kept turning them over in his mind, remembering how Tara used to point out men in suits, those crisp collars, shiny shoes, and gently nudge him toward dressing more professionally. Maybe this was her way of giving him a push in that direction. Maybe it was her attempt to say something without saying it outright. Even so, the gesture felt slightly out of step, like a song played in the wrong key. As New Year's Eve crept closer, along with his departure date, Tara hadn't made any fuss about decorating or setting the table. Still, they celebrated the evening quietly, just the two of them, laughing over shared stories, listening to their favorite tunes, and enjoying a simple meal together. No fireworks, no big declarations, just a small moment of peace in the middle of everything else. "Honey, I've got a surprise for you," Tara said, her voice carrying a playful mystery as she handed Nicholas a bright, colorful envelope. At first, Nicholas was caught off guard, expecting another set of cufflinks, not knowing what to make of the unexpected gesture. "Go ahead, open it up," Tara encouraged, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Reluctantly, Nicholas took the envelope and pulled out its contents. Inside, he found a skydiving certificate. Tara grinned. "I thought you might enjoy a break from work, and maybe a bit of excitement." Nicholas smiled back, though it was a thin, polite curve of his lips. His discomfort with heights was no secret. He only ever flew when absolutely necessary, and even then, he wasn't fond of it. Still, he thanked his wife, trying to hide his unease, before handing her his own gift. But as the evening wore on, Nicholas couldn't shake the thoughts swirling in his head about that velvet box he'd discovered in the closet. He couldn't quite figure out who it was meant for. Tara didn't have any male friends, nor did she have brothers. It seemed odd, and although he suspected something was off, he chose not to confront her just yet. It felt like a mystery he wasn't quite ready to solve. Days passed, and as Nicholas began preparing for his trip to visit relatives, he received an unexpected call from his mother. "You don't need to fly right now," Everything's sorted, and they handled the issue without you. Son, cancel your ticket, save the money, and you can come visit us later. She told him. Nicholas felt a wave of relief. Two things had just lifted off his shoulders. One, his family had managed to work things out without his involvement. And two, he no longer had to deal with the stress of the trip. It was a small, but welcome reprieve. That very same day, he canceled the ticket, though Tara didn't bring up the cancelled trip again. But the mystery of the gift lingered. Curious, Nicholas decided to find out where Tara was planning to be on the 31st. She'd mentioned celebrating with close friends, but something about it didn't sit right with him. He imagined all sorts of worst-case scenarios, though he still clung to the hope that it was all a misunderstanding. After all, he could always join her and the friends if things turned out innocently enough. But that nagging feeling deep in his gut told him that his wife wasn't being entirely truthful. On the day he thought she would leave, Nicholas packed his bags, leaving the house without saying goodbye to Tara, who was absorbed in cleaning. He checked into a small hotel, the nervous energy inside him growing as he waited for the 31st to arrive, the day that would hopefully bring clarity. When the big day finally came, Nicholas didn't feel the slightest bit festive. He dressed simply and headed toward their place, settling into a nearby cafe across the street, his eyes glued to the door. He waited patiently, though anxiety gnawed at him with each passing minute. As the evening wore on, Tara finally appeared. She stepped out of the building looking effortlessly elegant, her hair styled just so. She glanced at her watch before hailing a cab. Nicholas, heart racing, quickly slipped out of the cafe, ducking into his car, and began following her at a safe distance, careful to remain unnoticed. The cab dropped Tara off at a swanky restaurant in the heart of town. Nicholas found a parking spot just a few streets away and watched as his wife stepped out of the car, draped in a fur coat, and made her way into the restaurant. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, Nicholas finally stepped out of his car, his steps measured and purposeful as he walked toward the restaurant. He paused by the window, his eyes scanning the interior until they landed on Tara. She was sitting at a table, glass in hand, laughing. But as Nicholas' gaze shifted slightly, an overwhelming unease gripped him. Tara wasn't alone. Seated across from her was a man in a sharp, expensive suit. Nicholas' stomach dropped as he recognized him. Alex, Tara's ex-boyfriend, the man she had been with before Nicholas had entered the picture. The memories rushed back in a surge, how Tara had ended her relationship with Alex before meeting him, the promises they'd made, the life they'd built together. A sense of disbelief settled over him as he watched Tara pull out a familiar velvet box. With a wide, pleased smile, she handed it to Alex, who, in return, kissed her passionately. Nicholas froze, his mind racing as fury overtook him. He snapped back to reality, his body moving before his thoughts could catch up. He stormed into the restaurant, not caring who saw him. As he approached their table, Tara's eyes met his, a flash of horror crossing her face. She started to rise, but it was already too late. Nicholas, his face burning with rage, slapped her hard across the cheek. The sound of it echoed through the room, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. "You're not welcome in my home anymore. I don't ever want to see you again." Nicholas's voice rang out, cutting through the shocked silence of the restaurant. The guests stared in disbelief, and the waiters quickly moved in, asking Nicholas to leave. That New Year's Eve, the one he had hoped would bring him peace, turned into his worst nightmare. But Nicholas wasn't ready to let it end there. He remembered a detail. Tara had once casually mentioned how she and Alex had broken up because he was planning to marry someone else. That statement stuck with him now. As the truth began to settle in, Nicholas realized the entire situation had been a web of deceit. He wasn't the only one being lied to. Fueled by a mix of hurt and indignation, Nicholas decided to take action. He reached out to Alex's wife, exposing the affair and the lies that had been festering for years. The confrontation that followed was loud, chaotic, and raw, as both couples were forced to face the truth of their betrayals. The weight of their actions settled heavily upon them, each one left grappling with the fallout. As the clock struck midnight, marking the start of the new year, Nicholas made the decision that would change everything. He would file for divorce. Tara's attempts to mend the rift were relentless. But Nicholas, resolute and unwavering, refused to reconsider. He believed that some things, once broken, could never be repaired. And so, as the year turned, Nicholas and Tara began new chapters in their lives. Tara, still struggling with the consequences of her choices, tried to make amends, but Nicholas had already made peace with the fact that their paths had diverged. The fresh start they both sought would come from separate lives, each of them starting anew, in their own way.